at the Hall of Justice.
Hey. Welcome back to Chase and Shep, where Mondays are for the mind. We're live on every outlet at 6 p.m. Central Time. So hit the follow to the channel, make sure that you're notified, so you can join us every Monday. Chase and Shep is now live.
Chase and Shep, Mondays are for the mind. This week's guest is the returning radass, Darreon Nihiser.
Lovely. Oh, there he is. There he is. And another.
It was like glitching?
A little bit.
Hmm.
It took
You'll
you a
have
moment
that.
to get in. It happens. Welcome to an early edition of Mondays for the Mind. As the intro video said, we got Darreon Nihiser back with us.
Hey guys, nice to be back.
What's going on?
Yeah.
I love your intro song too, like your theme song. It's hilarious. I was cracking up. It was so funny because like you introed me and then like it showed y'all standing there just like whooping someone. I was like, "Hey, is that me?" No, we didn't film. We didn't film.
I thought it was a nice a cut from the title card to just Chase just popping somebody in there.
That was good. That was funny.
Shout outs to Randy.
People are gonna think we like waterboard our guests. Like these are some hardcore interviews we do here at Chase and Shep.
I wish we were at the level where we could film specific intros with every guest that came on. That'd be nice. That'd be fun to be able to do that and hit them with stuff. And yeah,
that comes with time, right?
We'll get there.
For
We'll
sure.
get there.
One of these days.
But yeah,
You know,
we are
people
like a little
what? Year old dudes that do the
we're like an
podcast.
hour earlier than normal, so the sun's still out. It's throwing me off. It's throwing me off right now.
Definitely. It's still the month of love, so we're still talking love. Darreon,
Hello.
let me ask you the broadest question I could possibly ask. What do you think you can bring to the conversation of love this month?
I think I can bring my experiences. I think I can bring in the experiences of people, in my life. I think I could bring in experiences of people like I work with, right? With love and with all the things I think that kind of get tangled up with it. It's an interesting topic. And funnily enough, I feel like there are a lot of aspects to it that maybe we don't necessarily talk about or are really open about. So yeah, I'm excited to talk about it.
Shep, dealer's choice.
Let's see. The month of love. What's something we haven't talked about this month that would be interesting to talk about? Do you boys, do you feel like the way that like society views love as a whole right now, do you think that pornog has had a damaging effect on that?
Okay.
Because basically I'm about to be 36 this coming year. So I grew up in the era of the internet booming. So it was like, if you wanted to look at that kind of stuff, you had to get a magazine, which you couldn't at like 10. But now you could literally probably put whatever into a search bar or even a website bar. And, people like my era, we know what whitehouse.com got you and,
Yeah.
But
yeah.
do you feel like
I've never heard anybody say pornog before?
You ain't heard it like that?
No. But I'm gonna use it from now on.
Yeah, I'll check it out, Shep. I'll give it a Google. Incognito, of course. I can't let
That's been pornog. That's been my Workaholics. That's where I've heard that from. Adam Devine on Workaholics always called it pornog, and
makes sense.
Forget what they always called masturbating as grind down or something. It wasn't that, but something like that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
saying
So yeah,
masturbating
no,
is just too, yeah, it's just too, I feel like religious. You got to call it something, right? Pornog, it's nice and cute, you know. It's like calling the
cranking down.
pandemic
That's
the
what they
pendy.
call it.
Yeah, cranking
Cranking
down.
down.
Um,
Um, but
do
yeah,
we
no,
think
like
it's
in
damaging? Is that what the question was?
yeah, because I mean, like, so who was it? Oh, like months ago, like probably half a year ago, Billie Eilish. That's who. She came out and kind of said, like, um, seeing pornography and being exposed to pornography when she was young kind of like really messed with her whole perception of what love was supposed to be and what sex between like in relationships and stuff was supposed to be. So like along those lines, like
Yeah.
do you think it's like, since it is readily available, um do you think because like rom-coms have shaped how people view romance?
Right. Well, I was just getting ready to say, Darian asked before the show if we ever talk about movies, and we're getting ready to right now. The movie Don John with Joseph Gordon-Levitt, the original title of that movie was Don John's Addiction, and his addiction in the movie is that he's addicted to porn, and he falls in love with Scarlett Johansson in that movie, and each of the characters kind of has their own addiction that might be a little more subtle, but like her addiction is romance movies. And so you have this couple who their versions of love are based off of these, fictitious things, the romance film and porn. It's just not reality, but that's what they're like basing their lives off of. So yeah, I mean, I think it can definitely have an effect on people.
Yeah, most definitely. I wish I was a better expert at kind of like addiction and how that works, especially with porn. But I mean, if you ask like, right, like well-known people like Terry Crews, he'll tell you, it does affect your relationships. And I think obviously, with Billie Eilish's experience, it's something that definitely affects you when you're young. I was exposed to porn when I was really young, right? Just for like some honest disclosure, right?
Mhm.
And I think whenever you're that young, obviously, like you're super influential by anything, right? And it's kind of like whenever you use porn, especially like when you're masturbating, you're constantly pairing those two. You're pairing like that expectation and the stimulus of whatever you're watching with like getting that like constant like sense of joy sexually, right? And that can definitely, I feel like, fuck with your expectations, even kind of like make that something a routine your brain is going to be able to kind of get into and even stay in unless you decide you're ready to change that. And I think that kind of extends past, adolescence or like your teenage years, right? Even into like your young adulthood, your adulthood, right? But yeah, I would definitely say it's something that affects your expectations, like with intimacy for sure, and the things you might be looking for in a relationship. And I also think it depends on like your like psychological defenses too, right? It's like, were you someone who is like in a community or society that's able to openly talk about sex or not? Right? So are you in a community or raised in a family that doesn't talk about their emotions or really like have those kind of open conversations about sexuality in general? Because that can really affect it too. A lot of because it's kind of like I forget the word for it. It's kind of like biopsychosocial with porn and its effects, right? I mean, kind of like sitting like love on the side with that, right? Because I think like love and the addiction to porn can be very different things, obviously. Yeah, it's interesting. I forget where I was gonna go. I was gonna take it to a point, but lost it. It'll come back to me.
It happens.
No, I feel, yeah, but I feel what you guys are saying. I mean, I agree with that too. I just like, cause I always wonder. I'm single out here in the world, trying to find my way and stuff, and a lot of people like, especially just seeing like social medias and stuff. A lot of people like to get their ass beat basically when it comes to having sex, and I've always wondered if that was like, do people really like that, or is that just what they saw?
Yeah.
Like in pornography growing up, and they think like that is good sex. That's what I always wanted when I was, was in my formative years, and that's what because it's like I just saw a meme the other day where it was like a car's mirror on a window like right next to a wall like that close, and one the mirror said domestic violence, and the wall's like how rough I like my sex, and it's like that's how close they like it, and it's like I just don't.
Yeah, and there's
I'm
all
sure
different
there-
types of ways. There's
Yeah.
all different types of ways to like show love, right? I mean, with like the sexual aspect of it, and with kinks, kinks are super interesting, right? It's like one way to like show love is like a language, but with sex, I feel like the waters can really get muddy. Going back to like the porn, I mean, if like too like we know that like too much of anything is probably not really helpful, especially when it comes to like how we have like our self-care, how we take care of ourselves, like how we get our kicks, things like that, right? But I think I might have interrupted you, Chase.
No, I don't think
No.
so.
Okay. Yeah. But yeah, like love languages is kind of what kind of like that point reminds me of, like how do you show like your love for someone in a romantic relationship, right? And I'm kind of curious, I guess, like are we going to kind of extend this like past romantic relationships to just talk about like love in general, or because this is kind of like the season of love, right? We're going to keep it like more romantic.
It doesn't matter. We can go down whatever path you want to take, but
Yeah. I guess I'm curious too, because that kind of like raises a question I might have for y'all. Like, what's like your love languages? Like when you love someone, and we can maybe keep it in the romantic relationship for now. Like when you love someone, how do you show them love? Right? Like, what would that mean for you?
feel you. I know I took one of those tests once, and it said that
Right.
my love language was physical touch, I believe. But I don't know. I don't know if that's entirely true, because I do like doing things for other people. That's I know that's my way of showing love to other people.
I feel that mine's pretty much that, but I know like my on my quiz or whatever, a top one for me was just quality time. Like, just being around the other person. I don't need to be in your space, and you can be doing whatever you're doing, but like, we're around each other, we're vibing. But yeah, just like like you said, Chase, like to me when I look at love, it's a lot of it's like I look towards like my son, you know what I'm saying? Like he's 15 and he lives in a different state. So like on Friday when he's like, "Yo, I want to come over to your house this weekend, Dad," and I got to drive to Indianapolis. It's like I don't want to drive to Indianapolis at all and back. Like that sounds whack. I don't want to do that. But it's like I would never even think about being like, "No, I don't." And it's like I would go an hour past Indianapolis if I really had to go pick him up. It's because I love that kid. I want to see him. I want to spend some time around him and with him. And that's kind of how I have always looked at love. Like, in a relationship, like, is it somebody like if I'm getting off work and I know, my partner's at home, am I like, damn, I was kind of really hoping I could just go home and have some alone time to me, or am I excited to go hang out with them? I'm like, oh, that's cool. Like, yeah. And it always differentiated to me, like, do I just kind of like this person, or do I really love this person?
Interesting. I mean, when I think about like the whole love languages thing, I think it just popped into my mind because I was like, I asked that, but like, who came up with like the love languages? I think his name's like Gary Chappell, or like Gary Chapman or something, right? I don't think he was like even like a mental health person or like research person or neurologist or like anything. I think he was like
He's just some dude.
Yeah, it's just some guy. And the love languages book got really popular, and people, take the quizzes. And I think when I took the quiz, it said like my top one of them was like physical touch, and another one was gifts, like giving gifts or something. But I thought that was really funny because at that time I was like broke as shit, and then even at this point in life I don't really make that much. But I think that was like something I was like thinking about for a while, and also thinking about like what are the other ways like I like show that. I think I have just like, and I think everyone has this, of just a mixed bag, honestly, of wanting to spend time together, and also the physical touch aspect, giving gifts, doing acts of service, things like that. Oh man, another question just came to mind I was going to ask, but yeah, I would say have a mixed for myself.
Yeah, it's definitely a mixed bag over here too. It's because, like you're saying, it's Some days it'll be more than others, you know. Some days I really just want that quality time. That's all I need. Some days, like you're saying, yeah, the physical touch and the quality
Mhm.
time is great.
Yeah.
Sometimes doing an act of service while they're away for them. I'm gonna go
Yeah.
take care of this for you. You don't have to worry about it. And one less
Yeah.
stress.
Yeah.
So I vibe with that.
I get a little annoyed sometimes, I think, with when I guess how like people sometimes talk about love. I think it's like I don't know how to like phrase it, but it's one of the things that seems like almost I don't know. I just feel like it's one of the things that's romanticized the most, obviously. I think when
Yeah.
it comes to love, there's not a lot of conversations about the toughest parts of love,
Mhm.
like especially with loss. I know y'all have covered loss before,
Mhm.
with loss, and also like when you really love somebody, like the ways in which um I think when you really love someone, it almost prompts you sometimes to like grow a bit or like learn something about yourself,
Right.
especially with the other person when you have disagreements with them or when you're just like butting heads or when you're having a bad day or when they're having a bad day. I think when challenges come up, it's not really talked about how much like, and it's not really popularized, I feel like, as much like how
Mhm.
love can like play into that and
Right.
what it like pushes us to do sometimes. Love is it's something that can be like such a huge motivator, and I think it's one of like the best motivators, and it's
Yeah.
one of the things that's like unconditional, right?
I do find myself trying to push against certain things that have been normalized in love. I
Mhm.
feel like, and they're things that I feel like we should all be doing. Like it's the like the things that we've accepted as a society. Like, oh, this is what love is. This is what
Yeah.
relationships are. Some of the views are kind of fucked. you know,
Do you think
uh,
that you could even like define love? Like if you had to define love, what would you say to some a fucking alien race comes by like lands down, right? And
You
they're
know,
trying to
I feel
learn
like for
about
me, it's changed over the. I honestly, I feel
Mhm.
like I've always been that guy.
Mhm.
As far back as I can remember, has always been like the hopeless romantic. That like I was always looking for the like the finite. Like this is the definition of what love is. But I find that the definition of love shifts as you grow,
Mhm.
and as you learn more about it. And
Mhm.
I feel like it does, like it encapsulates everything. Like I think for me especially, it was when I got into Buddhism
Mhm.
and stuff like that, and just how much it talks about just opening your heart to everybody, even those people who are just monstrous, and being able to have love for those people too. And there is like I don't know, I still couldn't define it, I still couldn't put it into words. But I know, back in the day, it was like, oh, this is what love is, like regarding like a relationship, whether it was like, oh, you see somebody and that's it, like they're your
Mhm.
soulmate.
Mm.
And
Mhm.
then you got a lot of people who are like, a lot of couples will get in fights over this. Like, it's like, oh, you can't be in love with more than one person.
Mhm.
I don't think that's true. I think plenty of people can feel that love for multiple people, but it's their choice to be with who they want to be with at the end of the day. So
Yeah. I can definitely relate to that. Like, I feel like I was also in that place for a long time because when it came to love, I thought I was like Pepe Le Pew,
mhm.
like all flustered and doing the chase with like women, and it never like occurred to me because I feel like, well, I won't like get into that like what I'm thinking, but yeah, I definitely like changed my views as well when myself as well as Priyanka, when we've been faced with some pretty intense challenges over the last few years during the pandemic. And I think there have been a lot of really trying and testing things. And I think one thing with love that can be like a common denominator and has been is being able to overcome for the sake of like those you love, right? I
Mhm.
feel like it's like love is like accepting like how somebody is or like how a situation is and still committing to like honoring that person or that situation. I think it's really indomitable, and you can tell when it's not indomitable, when like love is conditional and things like
Mhm.
that. I think
Definitely.
that's yeah.
I always did the age old I looked at the people that raised me and stuff and how love was. So, my grandfather's the type, like, he's only with my grandmother, and when she passed away, he won't even go out to eat lunch with a woman by himself. Like, he's just like,
Mhm.
no, no. And it's like, her husband's passed away too. She's just trying to go out and have lunch with somebody, my dude. He's like, I'll just run inside. Um, so I think when I was a lot younger, I fell into that. So when I got, like with my son's mom and he came about, that was what got me into my first marriage really quick was, I want to do the right thing. And then, you overlook so much within relationships and this and that. So at a very young age, I had that terrible toxic relationship that led me to grow from there. Um, and realize things I don't like, set boundaries and stuff like that. And I'm not going to have somebody treat me like that again. But nowadays, you know, to me, love, how I'd explain it to an alien, would be like, if you find it, because to me this can apply to everybody, because it's just like when you find your person that just feels like home. And I'm not talking, not the physical home that you're in. You could be anywhere in the world, at your highest highs or at your lowest lows, but you still feel like you're in the right spot, you're at home, you're where you're supposed to be. That to me is when you always knew, I'm in, like, I love that person. And I think that's like, because that's everything. That's friendships to me. Do I feel safe at my mother's house? Yeah, fuck yeah, I feel safe at my mom's house still. Like, I love my mom. Like, she's good. If I drop in a random house, do I feel safe in there? No, I don't. I don't love any of these people. You know what I'm saying?
Mhm.
Like,
Right.
you can be your true self. And that was a big one too for me. It was like, and that's why, like, a lot of people, you go out, and if I go to work, I can be 85% Aaron at work, but I kind of got to hide 15% of me, because could get, in a little trouble if I was, like, oh yeah, like I want to get
Uh,
smoke right now, or so,
Right. Yeah.
Mhm.
and I feel like at home you can be your true self, like you're looking at my home right now. It is me. It is my true self. Like, everybody that knows me would walk in here and be like, yeah, this is what I expect. So that was how I always just looked at somebody, like they're at home. So it's like I can be weird as fuck in front of them. I can try something
Mhm.
new and get some honest feedback.
Mhm.
Me being a musician, that was always one big thing in relationships, is trying to show my partner at the time like a new song and being like, "What do you think of this?" And they're like, "Oh, everything you make is so great. I love it." And it's like, like, honestly though, like, tell, is this good or is this shit? Like, you can be like, that was kind of cringy, but it was all right.
Bless you.
Bless you.
Thank you. My goodness.
So
Yeah,
yeah,
that's kind of how I've always based love, in my older adult now years.
Mhm.
I
Like
think
being
it's
able
worked
to
out.
just like be yourself and also like feel safe in a place.
Like, like, yeah, like
Yeah.
with somebody that, and it's not, especially these days, because I think, getting into relationships these days, especially dating wise, is weird, because a lot of us, it's like boom 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 with the apps. So you meet somebody, you talk
Yeah.
for a few you talk for a few days, especially if you look at any sort of advice towards men.
Mhm.
They tell dudes, like, if you talk to a girl 2 days, you better be planning a date with her, because at that point you're not,
Yeah.
somebody else already is, and this and that. So I feel like we really rush into relationships. We find people that
Mhm.
we think are physically attractive, and it's like, I have a physical attraction to you. Let's date, and
Yeah.
now let's try to get to know one another. And then
Yeah.
that's where things always go haywire, because it's like, oh, we're not at all compatible.
Yeah, that's like infatuation versus love. I feel like sometimes with a lot of people, and there are a lot of people I feel like who would like doubt that. I've had someone doubt
Yeah.
that in my life, that there's infatuation and then there's also love when it comes to dating,
Mhm.
right? Because like we definitely like hear stories. I've heard stories about, I met so and so at this spot and I knew I would be with them for the rest of my life, and they're like 30 years married, 20 years married, in some families' cases, like 40 years married, things like that. And that's fantastic, right? Like, you want to see that in the world. You want to see people who want to be together or finally be together. And I personally also seen like plenty of times where, and it goes both ways,
Mhm.
right? So people who go, "Oh, I'm gonna be this person for the rest of my life. I love her so much. I love him so much." Wait, can we curse on this?
Oh yeah.
Fuck yeah. All right. So like people who go like, "Oh, that's the person for me," right? And then they have sex with them. And then there are some issues that start coming up as soon as they feel safe together and feel like they can open up to each other. There's a
Mhm.
lot of baggage that can come with that too. And then
Well,
there ends up being a separation, right?
yeah.
And that kind of tested it, right? If it was like love or not, right? In some cases, of course, right? There's going to be like issues with like abuse and probably like some like legitimate like safety stuff, but in a lot of cases it can be like, oh, this person showed the side of them that wasn't lovey-dovey, and it either scared me or I didn't like it disgusted me, whatever else, and kind of
Mhm.
dip, right?
When I was saying earlier that I try to actively kind of push against certain things,
Mhm.
what you were just talking about, both of you really, about, okay, people rush into it, and then they start to get to know each other, like once
Mhm.
they're already in it, which is
Mhm.
that I think is what causes problems. It's solidified into a relationship.
Mhm.
And, they both sign the contract, and then later on they're like, "Fuck, why did I sign that contract?"
Mhm.
And they didn't read the fine print. But when those issues come up, I think it's standard practice for a lot of people to just not discuss it.
Yeah.
Or, it might get brought up, but it gets brought up in very harmful ways. Like it
Mhm.
becomes fights.
Becomes an
Um,
attack. It's like, oh, well,
exactly.
you're like blah blah blah, and it's like,
Mhm.
hey, that was who I was, but okay, let me attack
And
back. Defensive.
or somebody else is doing something that you don't like, and
Mhm.
you don't like it. And say for me, because I this was the experience I had, a little while back, where you know my girlfriend was doing something that I did not like. That a certain thing that I've kind of set that boundary for myself because of previous relationships. And I feel like a lot of the time it's standard practice to just suppress it and let it slide. And I push against that by having that uncomfortable conversation of saying, "Hey, this bothers me." And if they want to say, "Oh, I don't want to talk about it," I said, we have to, because you hate to be so blunt in the honesty, but it's like, if this problem persists, we will not be able to stay together. It's just knowing yourself. And I feel like a lot of people get stuck in a mindset of like, "Oh, well, I have to make this work no matter
Mhm.
what."
Mhm.
And that's not necessarily true. That don't just throw in the towel at the littlest inconvenience, or the first, like you say, you and Priyanka have been through a lot of intense life events. Bella and I have also gone through a lot in this past like year and a half of knowing each other, where it's just like those big life events test you for sure. But when it comes to your own personal boundaries and stuff, if I feel like if the other person you're with can't respect those boundaries, um, and you've tried your best, you have every right to say, I have done what I can here, and it's out of my hands. You got to walk away.
Yeah, and I mean that's to me has always been the biggest test to see if somebody does truly love you or no. Because like when you look at every other aspect of love, if if I grab my son and I'm like, "Hey, come on, we're gonna go do this," and he's like, "Dad, I'm real uncomfortable right now. I don't like this. I don't want to be here anymore." I'm gonna be
Mhm.
like, "All right, cool, let's get out of here. Let's go."
Mhm.
It's no question. So whenever any sort of boundaries have come up in relationships with me, if someone accepts that and is like, "I'm going to try my hardest and do that for you and work with you on this," that to me is love. Any sort of pushback is where it's like, you shouldn't have any sort of pushback here. Like,
Right.
this is how, like, you should respect each other's boundaries because that's what they'd want done to them.
Yeah.
So it's
I will
like,
say as well, I feel like another sign of love is almost, it's kind of the reverse. It's like two things being true at once, where it's like, I feel like if you said that to somebody, it's like, "Hey, this is my boundary," and or whatever news that comes up to this other person that's new to them, they also have the right to say, "You know what?
Yeah.
I can't accept that. I can't
Mhm.
accept that. I can't, it goes against what I think, feel, or no, I don't have what it takes to handle something like that." And they have the right to say, "You know what? You're right. We shouldn't be together." And I think that's
Mhm.
admirable, to also
Mhm.
to just know yourself, first and foremost,
it's
just
it's
baseline, knowing yourself well enough because then that's an act of love in and of itself. I feel like, to say,
Well,
hey,
yeah,
we're just
that's
going to
called
cause each other more hurt.
healthy communication right there. That's what that's called, and that's exactly right. You're communicating with them that, if because there are some things, like you were saying, there's things we all go through in life. So there could be some, traumas from, the past that somebody has with them. I've had this happen in relationships too, where I'm a very animated person. Like I talk and I move, and sometimes I'm like, oh, and I'm yelling and I'm doing this and that, and people, that startles some people. They don't like that, and stuff like that. So to me, that's something that if it's brand new in a relationship and I'm just meeting somebody and they're like, whoa, hey, you're a lot. You seem like a lot. It's like, well, then, this isn't going to work out, and that's fine. I think, yeah, because that goes back to what you were saying a little bit ago, Chase, of how people are afraid to just admit like it didn't work out. It failed. It
It's
wasn't.
okay for it not to work. Like, it's
Yeah.
okay. Like, if it doesn't work, you're not a failure in life.
Well, and I think a lot of people think it's a waste of time when you do that. Like, oh, that's all just a bunch of time wasted. I just spent all that time and I could have,
It's all how you take
yeah.
the hit.
Well, Adventure Time is actually what taught me a really good lesson in that, and that was just that, you look at I look at every relationship I've ever had, and if right now tomorrow somebody said, "Hey, man, we invented a fucking time machine. You can go visit any day you've lived right now. No matter what happened to me, if I go back to that time, it's happening." You know what I'm saying? Like, it's still happening. So regardless of, if it's 10,000 years after I pass away, if someone goes back to, April 28th of 2005, I'm going to be with the girl, my high school sweetheart, dating her at that time, and we're doing our thing. So that's one of those that always helped me really realize, like, nothing's really wasted in time. It's just, it's time to move to something new, something different.
Right.
I think, however you choose to love someone, however you show your love, however you react to those feelings that are around love, right? It's going to be reflective of like how you love yourself. Like, do you allow yourself a lot of freedom? Do you allow yourself to acknowledge your own limits? Do you allow yourself like self-respect? I think however you show up to yourself is going to be super reflective in, again, how you love others. Like, are you someone who is more like avoidant with those feelings in those situations? Are you someone who craves love? Like, there are people out there who really crave it, and then at the same time, while they actively try to pursue it, will turn it down, right, at a moment's notice, right? And we see that kind of like having like clinical indications in therapy. But I think however, like, you want to view like, oh, like, am I worth this? Do I deserve this relationship, right? If you're ever like questioning that, I think it might also be helpful to question like how you hold the relationship with yourself, which is just as important, right? I think the more, and it kind of plays into that saying, like, I hate cliches. I use cliches all the time. I hate cliches, but it's kind of
that's the thing about cliches.
Yeah.
They're cliches for a reason.
Yeah. It's like, you can't love someone until you love yourself. I don't think that's completely true. I think that's kind of like a silly generalization, but there's some validity to it.
Right.
If you can find like your own deservedness, if you can find your own like openness and readiness, like to just like enrich your own life and do better for yourself and ride the wave of growth and development throughout your whole life, it's going to be all the better for the people in your life that you are ready to love and connect with.
You can definitely fall in love with somebody without loving yourself. It's
Yeah, that's why it's such a weird like overgeneralization with that one. It's like you can love someone, but you're probably going to be showing them love the same way you show yourself love.
How do you guys feel are ways that somebody could learn to love themselves? I don't think we've been talking a lot of. I think we've talked a lot of different aspects of relationships and all this throughout the month, and I don't think we've really turned it on the personal self.
Ding ding! I'm glad we're here. I'm glad we're here. This is always a fun. It's always a fun and like educational like a conversation when I feel like, because again there's another I feel like my brain's just not working after work today. Another point, right, of the romanticization of love is that it's always turned like outward. It's always like external, and that you have to dole out love to everyone else. And it's not talked about as much as showing self-love. I
Right.
think like in our society, it's very like waspy. It's very like Protestant, like religious background that can come off as selfish. It can come off as overindulgent, but it's important to talk about. Not like being like a nice guy to yourself, not being like a people pleaser to yourself and letting yourself get away with things, but
Right.
true love for yourself.
Yeah.
It's okay to have, and it looks a lot of different ways for people.
It was like I was just saying before with the boundary conversation and saying this is what's important to me. I only know that because of that level of love for myself, the caring for myself, knowing, hey, you've put yourself through this before, and you know what happens when you don't stand up and say something and nip this kind of shit in the bud. And all the time, when you bring stuff up in conversations like that, it comes across as harsh because it is criticism, and of course it's going to make the other person upset. But for me, I've had to learn that, like, that's just her reaction. That's a natural reaction to criticism, is to feel upset. But I would not be saying these things if it wasn't for love, because I want this to work. And if I don't say anything, how do you know that you're even doing anything that bothers me? That communication is important. But the only reason I know all that is because I spent alone time with myself. It was after just a lot of toxic relationship after toxic relationship of okay, I finally hit this point where I'm like, I'm so done with this. I'm so emotionally exhausted from everything I've just gone through over the course of like 5 years or so. And insanity is doing the same thing again and again and expecting different results. So I finally just said, it's time to try something new, and spent a lot of time by myself for the next like 2.5 years. I was single, and I lived by myself for the most part. But having that time to just reflect and get to know myself, it was one of those things that, like, there were things I learned that I didn't even realize I learned about myself until I got back into a relationship. And then once I got back into a relationship after that period of time, then a lot of those lessons were a lot more clear to me, because it's like, here are the things that you learned about yourself in the time that you spent with yourself, and it was very beneficial. So nobody wants to be lonely, but I think it's important to be alone.
Yeah, it's really important to get your solitude. I think there are a lot of people who struggle with like being bored and being alone more, because like you can feel lonely in a crowd of people, especially if like you're dealing with something that no one else knows about. If you have like this shameful like secret or shameful thing that you're holding on to, you can feel lonely. Yeah, I agree. Like, I think the solitude is really important for you to get to know yourself, outside of what you look like around people. Because for so many people, they look very different in crowds than by themselves or just one-on-one with them. Yeah, I think whenever it comes to like practicing loving yourself, think about who do you love most in your life? Do you love your partner the most? Do you love one of your siblings the most, a parent? And then if they were having something to celebrate, if they were having a tough time, what words would you give to them, right? Would you give them words of encouragement or try to motivate them? If they were having a shit day, or if they just won an award for something, would you like treat them out to dinner, right? Whatever you would do for yourself, right? If you just had a child and your job is to like keep up with that child's like hygiene, with their food, with their activity, what would it be like for you to do that for yourself, right? I think that's love, even just like in the smallest minute details, is being able to, cook the meals that you love, or taking yourself out to like a movie, right? Or just doing something that you would love, right? Like, are you someone who's like a hobbyist who loves mountain climbing, right? But don't feel like you can take yourself. You always had to go with other people. Maybe take yourself once or twice, right? But again, like we kind of mentioned before, right? Everything in balance. Right? You don't want to be spending like
Right.
your entire days every day just by yourself and
Right.
indulging in yourself, right? There's a balance with everything, you know.
Definitely. A lot of that alone time also fell within the pandemic as well. So
Mhm.
once I was like truly living there by myself and during the pandemic, it was like, oh shit, that was definitely too much alone time. But
Yeah.
yes,
See, you guys
balance.
are saying this, but I'm sitting here like it's been about 2 years since my last relationship, and I'm kind of really digging my aloneness. Like,
Mhm.
I mean, being, I'm not like, opposed to relationships, but I think, if there was like, nah, that's it for you. If something, the universe came down and was like, nah, it ain't gonna work out. I wouldn't be upset.
Right.
I'd be like, okay, that's fine, that's cool.
Yeah.
Like,
Mhm.
but I do think, I had to reach that level with myself, and a lot of that comes from like me, like I said, I've got like a 15-year-old kid. So, like n- not leaving something behind, as far as like continuing the old family bloodline, that's not a worry of mine. Like it's
Right.
already done. Um, and I've done music for 20 years. So if something just happened to me, it's like, so I think that a lot of it comes from that, where it's like, I'm just fine. But, when I didn't love myself, I think you were just talking about this a second ago, Chase, um, is when I did, because you guys were both bringing up, like, even if, you can still fall in love even if you don't love yourself. And that's very true. But I always found myself um, falling into very toxic situations because I didn't love myself. So I wasn't looking after myself. So, I'd be with people that right nowadays I probably wouldn't even give the time of day. But at that time, it was those, I don't want to end up alone. Everybody else got, girls and this and that.
Mhm.
Um, and, like with that self-love, I think, I really love who I am and the person I am and the stuff I do these days. So am I going to let somebody come in and try to like straight up squash that? No, I'm not.
Right.
Like I wouldn't let somebody do that to anybody that I love in general. Like I would be like, no, that's not cool. You can't do that. And I always thought like, maybe there's something there with that. Like if you keep finding yourself in these toxic sort of relationships and situations, maybe you need to spend
Mhm.
some inward time
Yeah.
and figure out if you're just placing yourself in these situations.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm not lumping that situation into this category, but I've worked with a ton of people who just have like issues with like and it's not like it's not always it's kind of mixed in there. Love with like things like codependency or love with like just attachment, right?
Yeah.
Or love with like other things that aren't so helpful, like you were mentioning,
Yeah.
Shep. There can be a whole bunch of stuff, right?
We
That
had
we may confuse like love with, which goes back to I feel like the porn thing,
Yeah.
right?
Mhm.
If that's like our expectation and all the exposure we've had to even just intimacy, right? And it would make sense why some people kind of struggle with that.
I just had to have a conversation the other day about attachment in relationships. I think we were at I want to say it was all because of a fortune cookie, but it got brought up, and I don't even remember why. But I was asked if I was attached to my girlfriend, and I had to answer honestly and saying like no. Uh, To be clear, that's not how the conversation started. She wasn't just like, "Hey, are you attached to me?"
Hey
I'm like,
guy, you
"Fuck
attached
no,
or what?
absolutely not."
Yeah, yeah.
But like, I explained to her, I love you, I care about you, um, but attachment is one of those things that it's stressed a lot in Buddhism and everything, that like attachment that leads to suffering, and it's like one of those things where it's like if you decided to like cheat on me today and like leave me, if I was attached to you and this idea that nothing would ever change between us, I would be fucking devastated. Like that's not to say I wouldn't be sad now without the attachment. I would still be sad, I would still feel those emotions, but it would not rock my world in a sense that like that was everything. I put all my eggs in one basket, and that was the way I explained it. It didn't matter. She was like, fuck you. In hindsight, probably should have just said yes, but
Yeah.
spared her the Buddhism lesson.
Yeah, yeah.
But no, I mean, I feel what you're saying on that one for sure. I mean, attachment can be bad, like it can get you stuck in a cycle if you don't find, the reasoning why. And some people don't want to look for it or whatever, because when I was younger I had the same uh oh, look who it is.
We're talking too loud.
When I was younger I had the same sort of problems, getting very attached to people very fast and whatnot. And it's like, when it took the time to like look back at my childhood and stuff like that, oh, my parents got divorced when I was 10. Oh, maybe that's where that is. Like life has been pretty hectic since then with people coming in and out. And so, you go and you got to work through that. You got to process that. You got to look again, like I said, inward. And I think you start learning, you accept that, hey, that was beyond my control when I was a kid. I was just a kid. And you get that love back for yourself. And then that's when, for myself, that's when I started getting out of those attachment cycles. And it's like, to me, it's like, because it's always, you always get asked that question like that. You've been with somebody like 2 years. You attached to me?
Right.
Say it's been 2 years. Ask me again in 40 years, and I'll probably be like, yeah, dude.
Yeah.
Like I can't fucking imagine you not being here at all. Like
Right,
that's terrifying.
Because it is. It's hard to not get attached to things that are just always there. Like I feel like that. Like when 2020 happened, and all sorts of stuff just wasn't there anymore. It shook the world. A lot of people just were so used to things being readily available, and then they just weren't, and everybody's like, what the fuck is happening? Because you're attached. It's more so being attached to ideas, I feel like, being attached to expectations and idea. It does go back to the pornog. It's
it all circles back to the
pornog.
No, I mean it is that. I think when you're with somebody that long, like you look at like my grandfather, it's more to habit, and it's normal.
Excuse me?
Was I glitching for a second?
Yeah, absolutely.
Was I glitching for a second?
Yeah.
Okay.
Just a bit.
I saw both of you glitch. That's how I said. So like looking at my grandfather, it's like when you've been with somebody 50, 60 years, it's a habit. You're in the habit. You're in the habit of taking them to all their appointments. You're in the habit of caring for somebody, of being there for somebody. If like in his day, he was the provider. My grandmother stayed at home and took care of the house. So it's like he still has that want now, even though she's not around, of taking care of people, of being like, no, I got you. I'll do that. I'll take care of that. I'll take the kids there. I'll do this and that. So I think a lot of that is just that it's a habit you develop, and then you do get attached to people that way. Like me and my best friend, shout out to Tyler. We've watched wrestling on every Monday since I could remember, you know what I'm saying? Since we were younger. We still do now. And it's a habit for me, Mondays, Wednesdays. I know I'm going to be over there. Now there's certain times I might be busy. Be like, bro, I can't make it tonight. There's certain times he might be busy. And it's like, I remember this last time, him and his girlfriend went to the Bears game. So, he's gone all weekend. When Monday comes around, he didn't even hit me up. I get this, but there's still something within me that that bums me out. I'm like, damn. Right. And it's because that's habitual. I'm used to that. So yeah, I think I'm one that now I get my attachments through my habitual habits. Mm-hmm. So at least I'm in control of them, because it's like, well, I let myself get to this point.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, attachment's a funny one. It's always hard for me to judge it too, because it's just at the end of the day a mental tool. It's, hey, you survived growing up with a certain dynamic with your provider, right? This is a good thing. The bromance is so real between you two. I was about to say us three.
Not us.
Like, we haven't even gone out on a date yet, guys. We haven't even gone. But no, yeah, it's just your brain going. You survived and you made it with this system. Keep pursuing this, right? I think I don't know if it was John Gottman or some of the researchers that kind of did the work with attachment theory and all those things, but I think it's called the activating behavior system, right? Every single person in the world has it, and we all without knowing it or not, while knowing it or not, seek that out, seek out what our attachment had been, right, with whoever we want our forever partner to be, because that's just the script that we have. Like that's how our brain built up relationships. And I think that can be really dangerous, like we just said, for people, especially if we grew up in a neglectful household, an abusive household, or both, right? If we're not really aware of what's going on, we can keep replicating that, right? I mean, I'm pretty sure it's like common knowledge, like these days in mental health, is that whatever that traumatic shit we dealt with growing up was, we may either adopt it or actively attempt to kind of like flee it. In the case of love, it's super important to build awareness around what that stuff is, just in case, if it was ineffective then, right, or unhelpful then, like, is it unhelpful now? It could be, right, if you notice you grew up in those environments. And for some people, their attachment was just completely safe, and it was open, and it was loving, and it didn't come with conditions, and it was everything it needed to be, right? That can be great opportunities for folks, because that can be, I learned that this is the way to do it, and it's the right way, and I feel whole, and I feel like I can grow, and I feel like I can be myself, right? And those are wonderful moments for love to thrive, because we already have that basis, and then we can keep building on it from there, right? And passing on those love traditions.
Absolutely.
Hell yeah.
Yeah, I think a lot of it, like I said, for me, the concept of love really changed around, it was like that, just being a certain time of my life, and then getting into the Buddhism and stuff, and just the way it talks about, cultivating love through understanding. I mean, it really opened my eyes to the way that, you can love people and things in the world. It's just opening your heart to shit, and being able to understand, like, I said earlier, like, the comparison that they always use, they always go for Hitler, like he's like that number one bad guy in all of history. Apparently they took a vote and it's Hitler. But they're like, you can even understand somebody like Hitler and find some sort of love in your heart. And it's like, that doesn't make him not a piece of shit, but like, you can still, like,
I was about to say,
understand them as a human being, I guess.
Chase, you were about to go on Kanye territory here.
No.
You're like, whoa! Hold on, before we get a call from Alex Jones to come on this show.
Right? No,
We're
thanks.
good on that. We're good on
Pass.
that. But no,
But
I
no,
mean, I get the
you-
concept. I get the concept of what they're trying to say there. I mean, I do, because you could even look at like that. You could look at what happened surrounding that and seeing the compassion and the love the rest of the world showed, the victims over there, and be able to find the love. So
it's like, if somebody's being a piece of shit to you, if you immediately go for the standard response, which is just injecting that hate into your heart and being like, what the fuck, man, like, and snapping right back at them and giving it right back to them, rather than take a moment, consider it's like, yeah, that guy's being an asshole, but who knows why? It could be anything, you never know what people are going through, sort of thing. Or it's somebody you do know, and that they're kind of a piece of shit on a regular basis, but it's like, you can look deeper into that person and go, well, this is why they're a piece of shit. They're still a piece of shit, but I get where it comes from, and I feel for them, and they need to work on it.
Interesting. I feel like people forget that Hitler was also like on methamphetamines, or not methamphetamines, but on amphetamines in general. Dude, they drug that dude the fuck up when he was ruling Nazi Germany. I couldn't fucking imagine being around that guy. Like, evil, yes, also very addicted to drugs apparently. But besides that, it's not a love topic. But yeah.
Still, I learned something today.
Yeah.
One for the mind. Oh yeah.
Yeah. They were doing all kinds
One
of
for the
experiments back
mind.
then. It's so funny. I think it would have been interesting to hear like a woman's perspective, or someone who's not a man's perspective, because it's always funny. These conversations always like go to like something like crazy at the end, especially with like Hitler, like as an example.
That's true.
But like yeah, I'm curious like what other people's perspectives like would be, because obviously like men, and this is something I feel like it has been like gatekept for like a long time, but like just not not being able to talk about like our emotions, or not feeling like comfortable to talk about our emotions, I feel like is stunting. It's like it's so stunting. Like you have to go through like your own journey, like kind of
Right.
like what we were talking about before, like your own journey of solitude or therapy, or finding like a good group of people, or finding that one experience that opens you up, right? Like I've just heard so much people talk about like oh, I was finally able to love myself after like I used like ayahuasca, or like
Right.
my so and so almost died. And it's tough because it shouldn't have to like come to that, I feel like
Right.
I don't want to hate on people who have experienced traumatic things, or have like had ayahuasca help with their trauma, or anything like that. But I feel like it has to be more normalized for us to be able to like have these conversations and talk
Yeah.
about love, because then we can actually figure out where we stand a little bit easier, and love has a little bit more space to like find its way when we can actually just like talk about it in open spaces. It just feels so sensitive, and it feels wrong. Going back to our like conversation before and talking about like the reality, or just like pornog, right? Pornog itself, and talking about that. It almost feels as shameful to talk about the realities
Right.
of love in a lot of environments, especially as a man, right? Where people will say, just you having some problems, just man up, get
Right.
over it. Don't cry about it, kind of falling into the romanticization and like gatekeeping of all of that, of how love should always be great and not spoken of. You know, it's a tough deal, and I guess like whoever's like viewing this, I would like encourage, talk about love more.
Mhm.
Like doing check-ins like never hurts anybody, especially, checking in with yourself. How do you show yourself you love yourself? For some people, it's, I show myself I love myself. I take care of my crib, and I reach out to the people I love, and I do the things that I like, and that's great.
Mhm.
Right. And I would also ask, like, is there anything like people feel like gets in the way of being able to express love, feel love, or feel loved themselves, you know, um, definitely worth taking a look at.
Most
I
definitely.
agree, man. I think a lot of it has to do with the egos we all have within ourselves and stuff. Like when you were bringing up like the people that had to do like ayahuasca or some sort
Mhm,
of some substance to open
mhm,
their mind. I feel like
mhm,
those were just the
Takes them
people
out of
that
themselves, I feel like.
they needed that to
mhm,
kill the ego to where they could actually see the core.
mhm,
Um, a- and like again, if that has to be your route to find it, more power to you. Awesome.
mhm,
If you can do that on your own,
mhm,
just by chilling by yourself thinking,
mhm,
awesome. If you need to go talk to a counselor to figure that all out, awesome. I think
mhm.
every way is perfectly fine in my
Yeah.
opinion, because it's all within the journey of learning to
Mhm,
know who you really are.
mhm.
um yeah, like Ben said there, mushrooms and DMT are just
Just
tools. Just some tools to help you get there. I mean, and then I'm actually like these days there's a lot of scientific research being done with these sort of, DMT mushrooms. I think maybe even ecstasy, MDMA at least. To see, how does this help with therapy and getting to people's core and figuring out what's wrong and how they can grow and how they can move. But I like I said, I think it's all just within that journey of self. uh there's so many different ways that people have done it. I know there's guys that go out into the woods for 40 days and 40 nights and they
right.
figure it
Yeah.
out and they can walk on water. So it's like, how, like you can figure it out, but I think it's very important
Yeah.
to do.
Yeah, yeah, it's so interesting. I'm actually really happy that that like like ketamine like has been not completely decriminalized. Actually, I'm not sure like where it's at, like at least on the state level with Illinois, because I know doing clinical trials with esketamine was approved, which is like the ketamine derivative, and it's actually really helped people. I think when it comes time to like trying to love yourself and find self-love, people there are a lot of people who had been so traumatized and seen and or done or experienced really really heavy shit, where the brain just shut one part of itself off. And we can see all the time in trauma and with certain diagnoses that like whenever we're like just trying to remember something, or whenever we're trying to solidify something in our memory, I should say, I'll use that example. Whenever we're trying to solidify something in our memory, if we've gone through something so intense, we process that logically, but we don't process it emotionally. So there's only like one process happening, and important process is left out, which has caused like major memory damage for folks, which has caused things like a lot of dissociation for folks, right? And things like doing like EMDR, which is trauma-based work with therapy, doing things like taking like a responsible like ayahuasca trip, or using mushrooms, or using not mushrooms but psilocybin, right, to kind of almost rewire that, has been super helpful for folks. And I'll always go to bat for that for sure. And I'm actually I'm hoping we can get to that point here in the States too, because like as long as we are talking about like balance and being open to things, I think we've had such a long history with drugs, people have, that one of the theories of our evolution is that a leading theory of our evolution is that we got to where we're at now because we took so many like different psychedelics, because we did so many substances. Of course, I'm not encouraging anyone to hear, go fucking eat a whole handful of shrooms tonight and go fucking find yourself, man. But just like,
I mean, if
again,
you do, you
balance
do.
to everything.
If you do, you do. And
oh my
I
god,
hope it goes well.
well, I wouldn't. Well, teach their own, right? I
not
respect
endorsed by
decision.
anybody here. We're not endorsing this. This is
Everyone's adults. Yeah, everyone are adults.
throw
No,
out
I mean,
the jackass warning at the beginning. Like, don't do this at home.
yeah.
I mean,
But definitely, they are tools that have been helpful for folks, and more power to everybody. And right, can we do that work too? Still, like outside of like substances, right? To at least get those reps in of practicing like self-love, because whether it's therapy, whether it's substances, whether it's whatever else, external means, the internal reps matter, right? Just like if you want to go to the gym, build some muscle up, the internal reps, got to be done.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think just like had been said earlier, I think our society is scared of it because they think, okay, if the government, reclassifies all this stuff, everybody's just going to be taking as much drugs as they can every day and tripping. And it's like, no, it's going to be like, it should be used as a tool. It's not something that should be abused or used as a cope for the reality you live in. It's something, it's something that it comes along every now and then. And, you'll find yourself in a spot in life where you're like, hey, I'm in a spot where, I'm in a rut, and allowing that to peel my ego back could be what I need to get up out of this rut and figure out how to get back on track and get my, just like emotional, mental state in the right spot. So.
Absolutely. Well, it is about that time. So we got to hit it with the one time for the mind, closing thoughts. Who wants to go first?
I'll go first. If you want to have serious conversations about love, if you want to kind of like discover love more, what that could mean, I guess, for yourself, definitely gain other people's perspectives and engage, just so maybe you can have a chance to find out, what your relationship is like with certain people that you trust, and also what love could look like. I guess what self-love could look like. Love is amazing. It's one of the greatest like motivators of all time. It's one of the greatest emotions of all time, and it's really difficult too, right? It's not always peaches and rainbows. It's tough stuff, especially the long-term love. And if we can find more and more ways to kind of like helpfully and healthily kind of overcome those challenges, we can grow stronger. I think it's just like a society or as a people, but especially as an individual,
Yeah, I
vibe with that.
Rolling off of that, I just, those bad situations will arise, and it's important to communicate about it and have the conversations, set those boundaries, and lean into the uncomfortable, because more times than not, that's going to help you a lot more than suppressing it or just fighting about it. And not like, if you're not talking about it, it's not being handled pretty much. So, and the self love. One more time for the self love.
Self-love. One time for the mind. Don't let the pornog corrode the mind. That's a big one. We,
That is a big one.
we kept circling back all day to that one. But
the pornog was the wheels that this episode ran on.
I know what you're doing after this, Shep. Let me just say that. I know what you're doing after this, man.
The magazine, for old time's sake.
But for real, it's like embrace and embrace the journey that you're on right now. We're all here. So you just might as well embrace it. Try to learn as much as you can about yourself and go out. I hate to use this term because my job used to use this, but like go try to live like a kid. You know what I'm saying? Go out with a sense of like wonder. I'm not going to say the word that they used to use. It was
curiosity.
Curiosity. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So all jobs use the same thing.
Go out into the world with a sense of wonder. Like
Corporate
I've been
America.
listening to the It's Always Sunny podcast when I was taking my son to Indianapolis and back, just so I didn't have to keep flipping songs and whatnot. And that's one big thing they always talk about with Danny DeVito is that he still lives like he's a kid. Like, it's like when we told him in the Dayman episode that he's going to play the troll. It's like he like really in the episode when we tell him, he's like, yeah, he's like, that's really how excited he got over that he gets to play a troll and he gets to play this guy that's a scumbag and stuff. And it's like, it's just going about life with that sense of wonder and just like what, today might suck. Tomorrow might be cool. The next day after that might be even cooler. And then we might suck for 5 or 6 days straight. Just embrace that journey, man. It's a trip.
One final thought that just popped into my mind. If you want to have serious conversations about love, open conversations about love, willing
it sounds
conversations.
Like you're going to plug a website.
Don't.
Go
to christianmingle.com, www.christianmingle.com. No.
Have a talk with Jesus. Have a talk with local singles.
Yeah. Throw some women into the conversation, folks. Throw some men, throw some women, non-binary folks, they, thems, dem, ders, whatever you identify as, right? Get a wide variety of perspectives. You'll find some interesting stuff about yourself and about other people.
It's very true. It's very true.
Very true. As always, I feel like the best conversations take place when you're here on the show, Darreon. So
yes.
love to have you.
I love coming on and having these conversations. It's always enriching. Makes my days a little bit better.
Yeah.
Love to hear it.
I love you guys. Okay.
We love you too.
Men opening up. We love you too. Let's
have a good day.
Let's close it out. Peace.
Smooches and deuces.